You know, one of the things that we've been talking a lot about, I think some of the panelists earlier touched on it, is, you know, when you think about, you know, everything old is new again. So when you think about what commerce has looked like over the course of the last, since the beginning of trading, right? We've really had the same objective as business owners, right? We've got find, trust, buy, get. We need to find our customers need to find us. We need to build trust in the transaction so that people are willing to do business with us. We need to be able to create a way for them to buy what they're looking for, and then we have to have a way to deliver it. That's never changed. What's changed is the ways in which we do that. We used to do it in a very, you know, physical, moving goods, going to stores, looking at ads, that sort of thing. And now we've moved that to a more digital platform. And you can imagine in the future, we're going to be doing it even differently. You know, one can imagine that a future where, you know, supply chains get completely collapsed as, you know, as things like 3D printing matures. And so now we're no longer buying or creating factories in China and putting things on ships and shipping them and storing them and moving them again. But in fact, we're able to 3D print things at the 3D print shop down the road, and it's being airlifted to our location, and that's it. IoT is changing things. We're going to be, you know, obviously doing a lot with augmented reality, virtual fitting rooms, one can imagine. So as you're getting into as you think about the world that we've moved in the very short period of time, from kind of the old commerce world of find, trust, buy, get, to the new commerce world of find, trust, buy, get, where we're doing more things online, we're doing more things digitally, we're doing more things with our phone. So the next world we're going to, the thing that you have to recognize is that it's not just driven by technology. The technology is an enabler, but what it's really driven by is data, right? It's driven by and the way that we're going to be interacting with the data is changing. So, for example, you know, in the 3D printing model we just talked about, well, maybe we're not really moving information about the goods, although we certainly would be, but we'd also be moving information about the designs and the materials and how and the recipes and how it's put together. And so, with that sort of as a backdrop, as we think about where we're going to be, where we are now, how we're going to get more mature in the place where we are, and then how we're going to prepare ourselves for this future world that's coming. We thought it'd be really interesting just to have a discussion with a couple of really great leaders in the digital space who are doing a lot with data at the moment, talk a little bit about their journey and the accomplishments they've had over the past several years, and give you guys an opportunity to talk to some real experts in the market. My name is Derek Corrick. I'm the general manager of the data management practice at Pivotree. And with me, I've got Amir Burki. He is the senior director of merchandising, content and search at Grainger. Now, Amir, I think you've been at this for about more than 20 years, I would think.
It has
At least.
not to date myself, but yeah, turn of the century.
And so he's a fellow data nerd, taxonomist by trade, and one of the things I really appreciate about Amir, though, is that he really understands that digital transformation isn't just a story about technology, but it's a story about, you know, organizational alignment. It's a story about the data and how we bring those things together to really drive that transformation. Everyone knows Grainger, and you know what great innovators they've been with data, and how they're really driving, how they're really leading digital commerce in the B2B space. And Amir and his team are certainly at the center of that, and they're going to share a little bit with you about that journey and how they're preparing for the future. I've also got Michael Cakeley, who's the executive director of IT strategy and delivery at ABC Supply, and also 20 plus years of experience. Michael has lots of experience with implementing enterprise systems, lots of experience with technology strategy, and really a lot of experience with organizational change. One of the things that he's really good at is connecting the dots in the organization. So figuring out how to get the right people in the room to collaborate to actually start to drive business value. And the thing that he's been focused on primarily is, again, not just the technology, but the underlying data and how to use that data to drive business outcomes and get people aligned around the transformation that needs to happen to make to make all of this stuff work. So please join me in welcoming these two fine gentlemen.
Thanks.
All right, so just to get started, Mike, could you just tell us a little bit? I know that when you got started on this journey, one of the things that y'all were very focused on was master data. Can you talk a little bit about why master data was so important to you guys?
Yeah, certainly. So to do that, I'll have to tell you a little bit about ABC Supply. I'm not here to sell you guys anything. We are B2B. We sell construction materials. We sell roofs, siding, gutters. We're the nation's largest. We've got over 1,000 store locations across the U.S. Yeah, we're a big company, but that's really not the point of that topic. We once were a small company, very fragmented, very decentralized, and therefore our systems that were there to deliver product were really hodgepodge together. So we had lots of duplicate customers, lots of duplicate items. Items were very localized in what they meant. And we didn't even realize when we tried to run reporting, what we really had. We went through a technology transformation as well. So we ended up bolting on a lot of systems. Those systems required clean data, and we didn't really have it. So that was a pain point for us, an inflection point of how are we going to take what we already have without disrupting the business, right? And then move further. We've since acquired multiple companies, expanded into Canada, and because of all this work, we're in a much better position. And I would say in the crazy pandemic timeframe where supply chain was a really big issue, this allowed us to have more strategic conversations with our vendors and really allowed us to survive that time. And I don't know if we're done yet.
That's fantastic. So in terms of the master data, so one of the things that I think you pointed out that I think is really important is, in each different company you've acquired, they had systems. They had ERP systems, they had CRM systems, they had commerce systems, and any number of things. In your core company, you also had that, and all of that data, all that master data, obviously is being used to feed very specific business functions. So you're constantly bringing the data to the system, and then using it as in a fit for purpose way. And especially when we're talking about trying to bring together two companies that you've acquired, that sounds like a really, really complex thing. How did getting your master data, more centralized and better governed and cleaner? How did that help you really drive that business efficiency?
Well, I'd love to say we had this perfect vision and master plan when we got started. I think we just felt so much pain we had to get started. If I could reflect back on those times, I would have loved to have that clear vision of the outcomes, the business outcomes that we were striving for. But really, it was just pain at the beginning. So the big thing I think we did moving forward, we probably took 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But really getting a governance committee together was the big thing. Involving the business with discussion, making it partly their discussion. I've grown up in IT, right? And everybody in here, I don't know, probably a bunch of IT folks in here. A lot of times you don't necessarily feel that you can be at the table with the business and drive them, but you can if you understand the business. And so a lot of that governance committee allowed us to have business outcome conversations, not laden with technical jargon around golden records and things like that, but actually understand where's the revenue opportunity, where's the productivity opportunity. And when you can engage on those things and you care about together, you can move forward as a team.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. People get a little bit intimidated by governance. You have two people, sets of people, or probably more than that, but at least 2. One that gets kind of wrapped up in the academic topic of it, right? And they want to talk about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. And then other people who say, hey, we don't have time for that. We got to get things done, and we're not going to do. We don't have time to do that. So somehow getting those 2 people to kind of find a middle ground to actually drive outcomes. How do you do that?
Well, I think I heard someone on stage in the last session talking about perfection sort of getting in the way. You're right. We sometimes in IT have this very academic conversation. We're heated and we're arguing, we're yelling, and the business is like, what's going on? We're arguing over the 3 best solutions, and all of them will work for the business, and the business just wants to move forward. So again, my challenge is to people is learn how the business talks, learn to speak in their language, go out, understand your company and what the day-to-day life is like, and you'll be successful in having those conversations.
So that becomes about really the technology and the data serving the business, and not trying to make the business conform to the technology and the data. That's fantastic. Amir, one of the things that I was sharing this with you earlier. One of the best quotes I ever heard was from a Grainger person who said, their secret to success in data governance is they don't do data governance. Can you tell a little bit about what that means, and kind of how y'all have approached it?
Sure. First of all, afternoon, and I'm glad they took our pictures down, because mine was 5 years ago, and it would have given you a sense of what 5 years of managing hundreds of millions of data points does to a man. I did not have gray hair. I was not as bald, I promise. But that notwithstanding, data governance as a concept can be a little bit daunting, and it gets very nerdy very quickly, and it does get academic. That matters in so much as it's important to be able to train people. It's important to be able to ensure you have the right set of standards in your shop, but it's far more important that you act upon it and have controls and accountability. Everything about data is accountability, and we'll talk about this over and over again. There's a culture around it, and all of the solutions come down to that. Where is the accountability, and what controls do you have in place?
That's great. One of the things that they say about B2B, especially B2B distributors, is that they're a little bit slow and kind of tend to be a little bit lagging in terms of adopting digital commerce, digital solutions. Grainger decided to go a different route. Grainger decided to fully embrace it and really become innovators and leaders in B2B digital. What kind of inspired that decision?
It's a question we talk about, or we get asked often at Grainger. And a little bit about Grainger is we're 95 years old. We started as a company that sold goods, sold motors primarily. But from the very start, it was a company that tried to answer customers' questions. It was a company that, whether it was a seller, whether it was the books, we were printing books as soon as it was viable in the market. So in our DNA is the need to provide answers for our customers. And as part of that, it was obvious, even when we were bad at it 20, 25 years ago, that we had to start answering customers' questions on whatever digital platforms they were accessing. We couldn't have a drop-off in our service to customer, whether it was our sellers, whether it was our branches, whether it was our print. The digital front was the same. So we had to do it. It was part of who we were.
That's fantastic. So that's really, I think, interesting. You kind of hit on it two times. The first one is on the governance side and the culture of accountability.
Yeah.
And the second, then you said a culture of customer service, a culture of answering customer questions. And so when you put the customer first, and you realize that the customer wants to interact with you in all kinds of ways, then you have to really figure out how you're going to enable that to happen. What journey did you guys take? Like where did you start, and what were the steps you took? Because I worked for I used to work for a company that actually produced a lot of these catalogs. We talked about it earlier, so I remember the catalog days. How did you get started? Because that must have been a lot of data in a lot of different places and a lot of heads probably. How did you get that into a digital form?
It is. An aspect of it is certainly brute force. We have the luxury of being able to put the effort that we think is core, but you mentioned culture, and that's really where it all comes from. We, within my teams, we do this thing, or I do this thing, and my team laughs at me and says, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but we do this, and they say, what's this? What's this, Paul? It's the mirror. It's the mirror. Paul's nervous and shy. It's the mirror, and the mirror is accountability, because within data, you have to have that accountability, that it matters, that it really, really matters within the context of who you are as a shop, as a team, as a culture. Accountability matters within data, but you have to have metrics to prove that out so that it doesn't become anecdotal. But the accountability is core to what we are and how we think about things. I'll use an anecdote when we talk about culture of how we got there was by treating product master data and other forms of master data as core to the business. right? I think we talk about, we're a distributor. We move boxes. I don't know if Alan Miller's in here. If he's not, shame on him. But there he is. Alan Miller once told me this concept called disties. Disties, people who were disties. And they were people who inherently understood distribution was that you move boxes around and you charge a little more. And if you don't do that well, you are not a distributor. And if it was really ingrained in you that you knew how to move boxes and you knew the value prop that you have starts with that moving of the boxes, whether it was an apple cart, 1,000 years ago, or whether it's now trying to ship things around the nation. Supply chain is inherently important to all distribution. Data is the supply chain to customer experiences online. And that's a cultural type of touch point that matters and that allowed us to go from point A to point B, or concepts like that. Is it important? If it's important, treat it like supply chain. Treat data like the supply chain to experiences, because you wouldn't be okay if boxes showed up broken, if products showed up broken within the boxes, if you were late. You have to take that same accountability, Paul, with the data. And that's the cultural element that's really difficult to grasp, but you have to embed that into the culture and into the work.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it sounds like, Mike, y'all did something very similar. You decided that master data was going to be a company asset, and you were going to treat it like a company asset. And as such, you had to put governance around it and care for it. And so can you tell a little bit about, your how you started to ingrain some of that in some of the work that you did around master data at ABC?
Yeah. So again, it started with, we had an item issue. Let's go fix the item issue. Then it became, we've also got a customer and supplier issue. So let's go focus on that. That's really when we started putting groups together, governance committees together, start having, actionable conversations about what we want to do with the data. And the real goal, right, and this was all part of it from the beginning, was how do we tear down these silos? That it's not just a rift between IT and the business, but it's actually the silos within the business themselves, right? Whether you have actual procurement, paying attention to sales, paying attention to operations, they're all really connected and they all have something that connects them together. And so being able to facilitate those conversations, having them have the WIFA moment, the what's in it for them moment, really is the thing that helped us to be more successful. Again, also being mindful that we're not speaking too much jargon, that we're not burying them, because governance has a bad, sort of rap to it. We're actually creating business outcomes. We're improving revenue. We're improving productivity with the things that we're doing. And we're providing great customer service, great support for our suppliers. We're really connecting all the dots.
And so then governance effectively, right? Nothing mysterious. It's who owns it, who can make decisions about it, what are the rules around it, and how do we enforce the rules? And not everything is probably worth enforcing. And how do we make those choices? So that's really fantastic. Well, we've got 2 minutes left, and so I'd like to open it up to questions. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. I think we got some mics. I think right down here.
I guess they told me to tell my name and title. My name's Sean. I work at a company called eClerks. My question is just in regards to, you guys talk about owning the data as an asset for the company and talk about the supply chain type of focus and approach. One of the things that I will want to ask you, you both are distributors, right? So you have to work that external part is your supplier base that has to give you that data for you can ultimately serve the end customer. Historically, that type of process been throw it over the fence, right? Hey, send you the data, you figure it out. Hey, I need you to do something, you figure it out. I think people have grown to be like, instead of it being a fence, it has to be a door that's open where data can seamlessly go through and it can be that connectivity. So I will ask you guys, what conversations are you having with your suppliers in regards to the data needs? How can we improve this data transfer? And how high does that conversation go within those organizations? Or maybe it's tiered off based off their maturity levels and what they can do. So can you talk a little bit about that process?
Great question.
Yeah, I'll start by saying I just had lunch with my friends from Schneider Electric. They're one of our suppliers, team. It is a ongoing, critically important part of the future of data. the syndication from suppliers to distributors, the relationships, the technologies that underpin it, the processes that we're starting to stand up in order to support it. It is a part of it, just like the product. Again, the product analogy works here. How do you know what products to buy, and how do you work with the relationship with the supplier? Now there is a data component, a digital component to that relationship, and it's pickaxe work. You have to do it together with your suppliers, relationship build, and hopefully create better and better solutions so that you work together for your collective customers.
All right, we're just about out of time, but if there's one more question, I think we can handle it. And then,
Hi, my question, Amir, yes, you mentioned something about, you mentioned the word accountability. I believe accountability, that would translate more specifically into your team. And then you also mentioned metrics to prove that out. Could you expand on those metrics that have helped you to create that accountability within your team and even with stakeholders and across other departments?
Yep. Great question. So data especially is prone to anecdote, and anecdote is prone to a lot of the opinions of the organization reflecting very poorly on a team that works very hard. So if you work in data, it is the offensive line of an organization. If you give up a sack, you're in trouble. No one mentions that you just blocked successfully for 56 straight plays. So accountability is being aware of and accepting that if you make a mistake, own it, but use the metrics as a shield to anecdote. Accuracy, completeness, consistency. We talked about that earlier. Measure it. You have to measure it because that is your shield to anecdote. And then the accountability comes from what are your goals in the metrics? Stand true to those goals, own them. Be honest when you do make a mistake, but make sure that as leaders, we provide protection to the team around the anecdotal part, but you have to be accountable for that. Otherwise it's just defensive.
excellent. Well, I want to thank you. I want to thank you both for joining me up here. You guys are, just a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure you'd be happy to answer questions as you're kind of walking through the halls if people want to come up and ask you. So thanks a lot for coming. Please give these gentlemen a great round of applause.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.